It's time for the Wrestling Perspective podcast. I'm Dennis Farrell. He's Lars Frederiksen. Here in a few minutes, we have Bobby Fish. But first, we just want to say thank you to Fightful, Sean Ross Sapp, Rob Wilkins. Thank you guys so much for producing and hosting the show for us over there.
I don't know about you, Dennis. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm loving our new home. I love Fightful.
Yes.
I feel like this is such a great place. I know things are onward and upwards, or upward and onwards for this Wrestling Perspective podcast. So many beautiful things at our feet for the future. I'm sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to join in your voice, your whatever that big 50-cent word would be for excitement.
Excitement. There you go. That's perfect.
There you go.
As you can tell now, we're doing something a little different with the show. At the beginning of every show, we're either talk about some current wrestling stuff or past wrestling stuff or fan email. If you want in on the fan email us at wrestlingperspective@gmail.com. Make sure your questions or opinions, we'll listen to your opinions. We'll talk about them. We've got a bunch of questions. You want to do some fan questions real quick?
I'm down. Let's do this.
All right. Alex B. from Tempe, Arizona wants to know who would be our 2022 wrestling MVP?
Who? Man, I mean, 2022?
Yep.
I would probably either go MJF or Sami Zayn. Ooh. Either one of those two. You know, I think that MJF is probably he will go down in the annals of history as one of the greatest heels. I think not only can he bring it on the stick, but I think he's a superb wrestler and he's a great storyteller. And I think that was proven in the CM Punk matches. I think, as far as Sami Zayn goes, just his wit and who he is in but then again, I would say, I'm just trying to think, like, there's so many great, Diener from Violent by Design. I mean, I can't just say there's one, but if there is one, I'm picking MJF.
I'm gonna go with the obvious, and I'm gonna say Roman Reigns, but on your Sami Zayn point, I don't think I'd call him an MVP. I'd call him Scottie Pippen because he's made everybody around him MVP. I think without Sami, the bloodline would have died out pretty quick. And I know I'm making a case of calling him an MVP, but Sami has elevated Roman Reigns to the next level. And I think Sami would have gotten the best supporting actor role if this was a movie award show. But MJF, Roman Reigns for me. So
yeah, I mean, I see the argument on Roman Reigns as well, and I totally get it. But I don't think Roman Reigns is who he is without Paul Heyman. I don't think who he is without the Usos. I don't think who he is without Sami Zayn. So for me, he's more of the supporting. Even though he's playing a lead role, he's almost a supporting cast member in a lot of ways.
I agree.
In my opinion.
I like. Anyways. This. Thank you, Alex B.
Thank you, Alex.
Sam from Atlanta. Hey, guys, I found your show on Fightful. I'm going back to watch some of your past interviews. Dennis and Lars, what's one interview you would recommend I watch?
Oh, man, I think the Kurt Angle one was great. If that's still up, I think.
That's still up. Jason fucking Kendall.
I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, so during that interview, he was, Kurt Angle came on to promote some snacks he has, right? So through the
chicken snacks,
the chicken snacks. Through the whole interview, Jason Kendall's like, I went out and I bought some when I knew we were having you on. They are phenomenal. I love this flavor. Lars goes out, buys it, sends a text.
All of the flavors. Sends
a text to the group going, man, Jason Kendall, former baseball player, you're right. These are phenomenal. And Jason's like, I didn't order those. I was just kissing his ass.
But legit, I really liked them, and I kept ordering them, and I haven't in a while just because I forgot, but they're actually really freaking good. The sriracha ones, out of this world.
I'd have to go with our MJF interview.
Oh, that was beautiful too. But Ruby Soho was a great one.
I think that's what put us on the map was the Ruby Soho one.
Yeah, but I mean, even I'm kind of thinking from Eric Young was a great. We had Swan was another. I mean, I think there's a lot of really good ones where I feel like we got a lot of information out of these guys, and I feel like anyone you pick, I would say an older one, I would go with Kurt Angle. A newer one, maybe I would say. I mean, can you call the Ruby Soho a newer one?
That's 2 years old now. We've been doing this for years.
I know this is insane. So, I mean, I'm trying to think of one of the later ones that we've done that have been Vinny Massaro, because that, the indie one, or Ace Steel would have been another good one, I would say.
Yeah, the Steel one was very good. You know what? I liked our first Rocky Romero one we had.
Oh, that was great. That was great.
You know what? One from this year, Eddie Kingston.
Oh, awesome. And I love Eddie Kingston. Such a great guy.
Or our 300th episode with FTR.
Oh shit, that's right. I forgot. You know who we got to get. So, and I don't know if they're listening. They're probably not. But I want the Briscoes on here.
Yes, I've gotten emails from people asking us to get them on, and I've been trying to. Hey, Briscoes, I don't know if you have internet, but if you do, email me. wrestlingperspective@gmail.com.
I'll see what I can do.
Josh Bailey from Australia. Lars, I'm a super fan. I'm super glad that you are doing a wrestling podcast, but for the life of me, I can't figure out how you found Dennis. That's a real email we got.
Wow. Well, actually, Dennis found me.
I did.
I mean, Dennis hit me up a few times saying, "Hey, I do this wrestling podcast with, some ex, professional sports players, Jason Kendall, Dimitri Young, Darren DMAC." So, Darren was obviously a 4-time Stanley Cup winner. I'm a hockey fan. I'm also a baseball fan. Jason Kendall played with my Oakland A's. So, and he also had a great attitude. Even though he fucked me on the chicken snacks, I still love you, Jace. But anyways, Dennis actually sent me an email, and I thought, who the fuck is this guy? And then I went back, because I'm not really an interview kind of person. But Dennis, I'm super grateful that you did find me, because here we are. How many years later now? 4?
Just about. Yeah. It seems like forever now that you're stuck with me.
Well, no, but if there's anybody that I'd want to be stuck with doing a podcast, it's you, buddy, because you're great at what you do.
All right, let's do 2 more questions, and then we'll hit Bobby Fish.
Sounds great.
Pamela from Cali wants to know, if you had to rank your favorite wrestling shows right now from worst to first, what would they be? Can I go first?
Yes, please. Yes.
I would put worst, number 5, AEW. They started out so hot. I still like the product, but I need to see more out of them. I want better infrastructure. And if they were smart, they'd start rating the, what's the Dunn guy from WWE? The producer.
Adam?
Is that his name? Adam Dunn, or the teeth guy? I don't know.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I'd start rating his coaching tree and stealing whatever producers you can to better your show. You have so much potential, but you're just kind of pissing it away, guys. At number 4, dude, this is a tough one. I'll go SmackDown, only because it's on Fridays, and I just find it hard to watch wrestling on a Friday night. I would go MLW at 3. It's up and coming. The people are nice. I love the product. I wish more eyes were on it. And I'd even put NWA at 3 too. So maybe an NWA MLW mix right there. I would go NXT right now at 2 and Raw at number 1, because just the turnaround Raw has made under Triple H phenomenal. How about you?
Well, if you would have asked me this question, let's say 6 months ago, my worst to first, it would probably be Raw, SmackDown, and then, 3 others. But, I'm like you. I feel like since Triple H has taken the helm, it's actually watchable television, and television that I can get into and get behind people, get behind characters. Worst to first. I'm going to have to probably say AEW as well. As much as I love that product and I love that show and I love that company and I really enjoyed it because it was definitely a different, option than what I was burned out on WWE so hard. But like you, I want more consistency. I feel like a lot of the wrestlers that I do love in that company, you don't really see them. But I do enjoy the fact that MJF has such a heavy spot because I think he's the greatest heel that's happening right now. Probably 4, I would do maybe Raw because I'm still kind of trying to catch up with it. Once I think Cody comes back, and a lot of these guys it seems like they're retooling it. They're kind of getting their mojo back. So I'm just going to give it a 4 for now. 3, I'm going to go Impact. I am a regular fan of watching Impact. So I'm going to put them right in the middle just because I just enjoy the show. I enjoy the wrestlers. I enjoy the commentary. Speedball is one of my favorite guys. I see him a lot on the indies here. Number 2, I'm going to go AAA just because I love Lucha Libre. And I really love what they've been doing as of recent. And it's just that promotion, CMLL, that's the TV that we would get all the time. And when AAA sort of started up, it was very hard to find, AAA shows. But yeah, so any kind of lucha stuff, and I'm loving the clowns and there's so many just great talents there. Number 1 show to watch, I'm going to probably have to say it's a tie between and the only reason why NWA didn't make the cut, it's just because I haven't been that consistent with NWA, but I do enjoy that product every time that I do watch it. I love Ricky Morton. I love Kerry Morton. And also to go back to Impact, having Bully Ray there and the big pay-per-view coming up in January, I'm really excited. I'm really invested because Bully Ray is an asshole and a great heel. And I'm a heel guy. I love the heels. Number 1 show, I'm probably going to have to go with I'm going to have to go with SmackDown. I think it's always been the superior WWE TV show. It's really hard for me to say.
Do you watch it live or do you watch it later on DVR?
I am both.
Okay.
Because I stream. So, and that's just this week though. You have to understand, like last week's SmackDown, I thought was just a great show from start to finish. And that's why it's fresh in my mind to pick them as number 1. But normally I would say like, I don't know. There's so many promotions. GCW is a great promotion. It's hard.
And by the way, me leaving Impact off my list is not a slight to them at all. So I just
I got them.
Yeah, you got them. I didn't. So we're covered.
And then you have to remember that there's a lot of wrestling companies, and this is a weekly thing, Dennis. This is not a forever.
I agree, because you ask us next week, shows may pop off and shows may pop on our list.
Yeah, and you picked Rob just because of the regrouping, the revamping. So as number 1. And I know for a fact 2 months ago you would have said that wouldn't even have been in the top 5.
No, not at all. Kendi didn't put where he's from. So if you leave an email for us, wrestlingperspective@gmail.com, say it 3 times, you'll always remember it. Kendi wants to know, what is our bucket list interview of someone we've not interviewed yet? That's a good one. I'd have to go somewhere classic. And now bucket list, I'm going to try to say somewhat attainable. Like, look, we would all love to interview The Rock, but he's not fucking talking to us. So bucket list, maybe like a Stone Cold or Bret Hart, maybe, although Bret, just because of his, legacy. Man, God, maybe a Edge or a Christian would be up there on my bucket list. I'd put MJF back up there since we had him before his championship run 2 years ago now. It was during COVID. So we haven't talked to championship MJF yet. So that might be, can you re-put someone back on a bucket list? I don't even know. What about you?
Well, I'm going to say with the Briscoes. I want the Briscoes on here. They're one of my favorite tag teams. I remember getting hip to them around 2007. There was a series of DVDs called Match of the Year Candidate. And a lot of the wrestling traders, you know, would make these Match of the Year candidates. So you'd go month by month by month. So for January, you'd send you the best matches as voted upon of January, February, and you'd have to, you know, there sometimes would be 7-8 discs. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they had a match in Japan in January of 2007. And I remember being so excited by the physicality of these guys. And they're young, you know, they're shaved head, no facial hair. They look like the British Bulldog and Davey Boy Smith, or excuse me, and Dynamite Kid. And it's like that's they look like a rough around the edges punk rock version of that to me. You know what I mean? And that's when I really clocked them. And I don't talk about them as much as as much as I love them. I very rarely talk about them. Maybe I don't know if that's some sort of psychological problem I'm having, but I want the fucking Briscoes in here. And what I would love, the dream freaking interview, is to have the Briscoes and FTR at the same time.
Oh, I just got a wrestling boner. Oh my gosh. Wow. Holy cow. Ooh, just got tingly. Just thinking about that would be a phenomenal. Listen, so here we're going to throw it to Bobby Fish in a second. We'll be doing these more often during our interviews beforehand. So please throw us questions. We want your comments. If you have a hot wrestling take, we want to hear it so we can discuss it with you. So shoot us an email. I cleared out because we didn't really do much. We just interviewed and moved on. So I had an email full of emails from you guys. No, I read them. I feel bad we didn't get to them, but that wasn't how the show's structured. But now we're structuring it this way. Your emails will be read and we'll get to as many as we can. So Lars, you ready for some Bobby Fish action?
Let's get Bobby Fish on the horn.
Good. It's time for the Wrestling Perspective podcast. I don't know if we're going to do a preamble or not this week, but if so, fuck it. We're doing it again. That's Dr. Lars Frederiksen. I'm Dennis Farrell. What's going on, everybody? Lars, I'm excited. We have, and I hate to use the word tag team specialist, but we have a guy that I've become a fan of since I started listening to his podcast. Sure, he wrestles sometimes. You may have seen him pop up on all your TV stations that have wrestling on. He's been everywhere that we want to be. This is Bobby Fish hanging out with us today, Bob. Hi. Can I call you Bob? Are we that good of friends?
Yeah, whatever. Listen, I've definitely been called worse than Bob. I've been called worse than tag team specialist. So we're still above board in my opinion here.
Wait. Well, I think he's probably the only wrestler that you've seen in every promotion in the last year.
Yeah. He may be working harder than I am.
I've made my rounds.
That's kind of what my point was. I mean, you know, I feel like not only is he a tag team specialist, but he can get in there with anybody and do his thing. So, but then again, Bobby Fish, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for making it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Very much appreciated. Kind words.
We did not mean a single one of them. I'm going to be honest with you. There's a script, but Lars sends me every week. I have to read off, and
sure.
Now I have to call him doctor every week. I don't get it. He just wants to be like Isaac Yankem now.
Right. Well, birds of a feather, because I'm the most disingenuous person you're ever going to come across. So,
this will be a great show.
Yeah, just all bullshit.
I want to start out the questioning here, and now us as wrestling fans, we have this preconceived notion that if someone was in NXT when Triple H was there, they're automatically Triple H's guys. You kind of fall under that regime of you were there when he was there. You guys were probably the big money maker with Undisputed Era. The regime changes over. I listen to your podcast. You guys make a little joke here and there on your podcast about Triple H calling you. But come on, Bobby, talk to me here. Are you a Triple H guy? Would you call yourself a Triple H guy? Is there a chance like you may be expecting a call from Triple H since he's kind of bringing back some of his favorites. What are you a Triple H favorite?
I will say that during our time there, I would definitely consider all of us Triple H guys. And not that we were a Triple H creation, but we had his blessing in order to move forward as the group that we were. I think he recognized something that other people, for whatever reason, failed to see, and the value in us as a group, because legitimately we were 4 guys. I mean, it started out as 3, but eventually they added Roddy, and Roddy would have been the only other person that could have been added under the umbrella of the company. But I think he just saw like this genuine friendship between the 4 of us and was like, well, shit, I'm going to put that on screen. And to be honest, I don't know why nobody else saw that before it. But yeah, he was smart enough to see that and run with it. And, we were blessed to have the run we had there. And to be, I'm a huge fan of like the Crockett years and the War Games and all that stuff. That's the stuff that when I was a kid, Dusty and that stuff really hooked me. So to think that later in my professional life, I would get into pro wrestling and with 3 of my best friends be in a group that would at times share sentence space with the 4 horsemen, and then be in the this generation's edition of the War Games in the first 4, like, I don't know, it's kind of still surreal.
You mentioned the undisputed and the original 3 guys, and obviously the business changes and you guys end up at the same company, different company, and now you got 2 guys that are basically injured. And I don't even, are you even working for AEW anymore?
No.
So so after all this goes down, at the beginning there, when you guys sort of reunited there, did it feel a little bit different in the sense that maybe you had more freedom to express, maybe build what you guys really wanted to? Maybe there was no ties. What was your experience there, having you 3 there and sort of a new canvas, so to speak?
I felt like when we were in NXT, we felt like we were able to cut the promos and say what we wanted to say. Basically, we were, we got outlines and like a bullet point sort of thing, but never did Hunter or the other writers. Joe Belcastro was the head writer then at the time, and we worked very closely with him, and it was always kind of the same thing. And the production people joked about, their one take UE, because literally backstage stuff took us 1 to 2 takes, because it was like locker room talk. It was like the boys just bullshitting after a game of some kind or whatever. So I don't know that we felt any new freedom, because we never felt handcuffed prior. Even with WWE, which obviously at times can be criticized for being overproduced and micromanaged. We didn't get a lot of that. We really didn't. And in NXT, where we were, I think we were, we were. I'll go back to the first question. I consider us Hunter's guys, and we did I played sports through most of my life, and there's certain coaches I've played for that, like, I played for my own success, but I wanted their approval as well. And I would dare to say that like Hunter was kind of that with us there, because we knew he took pride in what he had with us, and we took pride the same way.
I've watched you change over the years. I was a Ring of Honor guy, watched you in Ring of Honor. I went back and watched some of your old Pro Wrestling Noah stuff. You leave NXT. What in your mind was the difference between pre-WWE Bobby Fish and post-WWE Bobby Fish, and maybe how you wrestled or approached the business?
I think pre Bobby Fish, especially like you bring up Noah. I knew that I wanted a heavy martial arts influence there, but at my time, around the time frame of Noah, I didn't necessarily know how to include that, how to like weave it into the pro wrestling. Eventually Ring of Honor, New Japan, like right before going to NXT, I felt like I was figuring that out. And then once with NXT, I felt like I I really had that figured out. But being in the group, I played a part, it was like being in a movie. And you don't get a role in Top Gun and go, oh no, Tom Cruise needs to step aside. I'm Maverick, So there were certain things that I think I got very comfortable with in my Ring of Honor and New Japan run that I kind of parked or put on the back burner, because that's not who I was asked to be in the Undisputed Era. And so then leaving NXT, I really got a chance to like sink my teeth back into, hey, what is this martial arts influenced thing look like? Especially as a singles competitor, because, with NXT, we were tons of tag team, tons of multi-man, tons of, Cole would have a world title match and we would interfere, or we would, Kyle and I would run in, hit the double team, et cetera, et cetera. So, I really felt like I got an opportunity to figure some stuff out, and that was so much fun.
Well, you mentioned Noah, you mentioned ROH, you mentioned, you've been, like I said, jokingly, pretty much at every company. When you got into AEW and you came there for the first time, I mean, it's definitely got that indie vibe to it, and it's also got, and then there's levels of professionalism and anywhere you go, and unprofessionalism. Did you feel like you fit in more with that kind of style, or did you feel, when you're looking back, maybe the NXT version of Bobby Fish or the Japanese version of Bobby Fish or whatever it was more? I know we all grow and mature, and I get that. And I know this is kind of a stupid question, but where do you feel like you fit the most? How about that? Besides the obvious answer, which is anywhere. Like, give me like,
Yeah, so we'll preface this with anywhere. I feel like I feel like if given the choice, I do perform better with a little bit more structure, but not handcuffs. And I feel like there was a good portion of time in the NXT run where we had that. We had enough structure, but not so much to where it was a problem. But that wasn't the entire run. And then with AEW, there were probably times where I would have liked a little bit more direction. And I think that there's a sweet spot somewhere in the middle. And I don't know that either company or any company gets it right 100% of the time. Obviously, that's the goal. And I think there was a time in NXT for a good period of time where we were clicking on the cylinders that we should have been. And then I feel like with AEW, especially with Adam and Kyle, once we were there, and history that we had with, let's say, like the Bucks, and I mean, you could even roll like the Briscoes, and there was a lot of, I think, money on the table that I hoped we would visit, and things just didn't go that way.
Maybe building off this question, you are closely tied to Kyle O'Reilly. You both have come up together, best friends. He goes out with the injury. Your contract isn't renewed. Do you feel like, I'm not even asked that question, but do you feel like when he comes back, or if he comes back, that there's a reunion to be made at a major company somewhere else that maybe you're just going to bide your time, find a company, hang out there. But when O'Reilly comes back, maybe it's reunited and it feels so good.
I think in a lot of fans' eyes, that's the version of him and I. Whether you, for lack of a better term, Red Dragon or Undisputed Era, whatever you want to call it. I think that there are people that enjoy that quite a bit. I don't have I don't have a crystal ball, obviously. And what I've learned in the business, especially the last few years, is that, like, man, anything is possible. I didn't expect necessarily my release from NXT, and then I didn't necessarily expect the AEW thing to come about, and even in the fashion that it did, it was really kind of neat the way Tony brought me in, and that was different. So
Wait, did you just say neat? That was kind of neat. Like, wait,
yeah.
Now I have to ask you to expand on that, because
Yeah.
I don't read the news. I'm not a news.
Okay.
So when you say neat, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, there's got to be a story here. Like, did you guys have lobster together and there's candlelight dinner and he's blowing out the candles and you get drug out of a room? How's it work? What's neat?
No, not that kind of neat. So it was
because that is a particular type of neat.
Yeah, that would be kind of like a Tinder sort of neat.
Or a mafia hit.
Yeah, or that.
He made you walk in first, didn't he?
All
right. Oh, Bobby Fish.
Who knew?
Who knew?
Yeah. So it was attached to like a tweet, and Sammy Guevara had just won one of the titles there, and then I was not affiliated with any company at the moment, and so I tweeted something, and then that was kind of how it came to be. And then I came in through I believe they were calling it the Forbidden Door. And yeah, it was just kind of an outside the box sort of way to debut, and I was down for that. Like, that was anything different, and to varying degrees of success that Forbidden Door thing has been, but it's all subjective. So anytime that you're going to do something that's different, yeah, I'm up for at least trying it. And that I thought was really cool or neat, whatever you want to tag it. But yeah, to come in that way was interesting, and I enjoyed it.
Over the years, I think we've seen the style of wrestling change, and it seems like, in my opinion, and it's maybe maybe it's a popular opinion, unpopular opinion. Like Dennis, I could give two fucks about dirt sheets and things like that, but I feel like a lot of the storytelling aspect is sometimes lost, and it becomes more of a theatrical show. I know that you're a wrestling fan. What do you try to bring to the ring with you as far as the psychology or the storytelling? What's more important to you? Is it the athleticism or the storytelling psychology part of it?
Again, I think there's a sweet spot in the middle, and I think that the matches that we a lot of people tend to enjoy the most are the ones with a good balance of the two. I think sometimes pro wrestling is very guilty of overcomplicating things and trying to tell a story that is too nuanced, and then that loses the audience. Anything that is too nuanced is it's going to be a difficult sell. And I think sometimes, bookers or creative people, they try to get too cute. And at the end of the day, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. That's been said. I just, from a personal standpoint, I've always been keen to like the technical side of things. And I think that you you get to a point in your wrestling development where you learn enough of the foundation and the basics, and you hope that it's good, that you've been taught by somebody who knows what they're doing. And then it's up to you to start adding your flavor. And like I said before, my flavor in that way was martial arts. And it's because that's what I started doing that when I was 8 years old. So like that was always very technical. And that's just kind of the way that I put quite a bit of importance on that, because that's, that's my paintbrush. That's my influence on my work, I suppose. But again, it's apples and oranges. I think it's different things for different people. I think, and that's the stuff too that makes it really cool, and that's what pro wrestling. You get like the Young Bucks in a match with Kyle and myself, and what makes us so different is also kind of what makes it work. So it wouldn't make sense if we were both out there trying to do the same things, um, it's kind of the way I see like mixed martial arts nowadays. Like you got to check all the boxes. It's not the world of specialists anymore. Like everybody does everything so well. Where with pro wrestling, I think sometimes we veer into that lane, and, not to say that a big guy can't do a moonsault, because obviously they can. But sometimes I think when everybody's checking all the boxes, all the matches look the same. So it's like, that's the beauty of pro wrestling, because we control some of these variables. You don't have to check all the boxes. So have your style, stay closer to your style so that your style clashes or blends well with the next style, depending upon your opponent, etc., or your partner, blah, blah, blah. And I think that somewhere in pro wrestling, that's one of the things we've lost that's really been detrimental to its overall product.
One of my favorite things about you is kind of like me. I grew up on WCW, NWA. War Games was always my favorite match, and I still will go back and watch them. As a fan, a student, being able to participate in a handful of them, can you compare your War Games work to the War Games of past? Have you tried? Do you go back and watch them? I don't believe in a grading system, but do you feel like you, Bobby Fish, did it justice being a student of that?
I'm pretty proud of the War Games matches that we did. We were the first, coming back for this generation and with NXT, and none of us, really knew what the fuck we were doing on that first one. But I felt like we got something halfway decent, and we got better with each one, and each one had a little bit more story to it. The fourth was very story heavy with Pat McAfee and Cole, and I feel like we had an opportunity to learn from mistakes, get better at it, plan better things, be a little bit more strategic without losing the organic feel of classic pro wrestling. If I'm being honest, and I look back at like some of those War Games that the VHS tapes that I wore out as a kid, when I watch some of those, I think from a technical standpoint, it's you can see just the business is just different then. And there was a lot more organic feel to those matches, good and bad. So I think that that's the biggest difference between the two, is you really see that the business is just handled in a different way now as opposed to what it was then. But I think they all have their own pros and cons, and merit, certainly. The War Games is just an awesome experiment. Very successful.
When I think about those NXT, and they're grabbing a lot from those WCW pay-per-views, Halloween Havoc, these whole things, War Games, stuff like that. And, you had a guy back there, Regal was back there with you, and he's such a great mind And every time that me and him talk, we talk for hours about so many different things. But, do you feel like who's bringing those ideas to bring those types of events back? Was it like somebody sits around? Did you know who? I mean, because you have so many great back there. You mentioned, you got Regal, you got Triple H, you got Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
It must have been like such a great learning curve for you to have all those people around you.
Oh, it was awesome. And I think the three that you just named right now are probably, those are the three that, like, I've always assumed were responsible for bringing those ideas to life. I always appreciated that fact with the three of them, because that, like I said, was stuff that I grew up on. So to be exposed to that, I guess we'll call it like a think tank. I can't put a value on that when it comes to professional wrestling and being at NXT. I remember the first like 2 weeks that the four of us, we were moved into Sean's class, and we would do film study and stuff like that. And I had to remind myself that first couple weeks to stop getting in my own head and just thinking like, holy shit, that's Shawn Michaels, and actually listen to the valuable information that was coming out of the man's mouth. Because like you're sitting in the room, and there was a couple times when like Nash and Scott Hall had come to say hello, and X-Pac, and here we are sitting in a room with the three of them and Sean. Only one missing was Hunter, and we're watching, whatever, and they're commenting on it, and it's just to be a fly on the wall in those scenarios. Like, again, just stuff that I'm probably not ever going to be cool enough for.
Yeah, because I'm sitting here listening. I'm like, dude, I don't know if I could have. I mean, this isn't my question, but it's a question. But come on, I mean, they have a certain level of coolness. Can you fan out in front of them as a professional? Do you have to pretend to be an equal? I mean, because I don't know if I was sitting in a class. I do a podcast with Lars, and I try every week not to fan out with him on the podcast. But I mean, do you allow yourself a little bit of like, you're Shawn Michaels, can I tell you, and just do that kind of thing with them?
I think in the beginning, but then eventually you spend so much time with these people that as inconceivable as it seems at one point, it happens. Like it like humanizes, and then you have similar likes or whatnot. Like Sean was always like keen to talk with me about MMA, and those were always fun conversations. And then because of both of our life experiences, you have the unique situation of like being fans of MMA, but at the same time being in pro wrestling. So there's an interesting sort of transfer of those things. And so like some of our conversations would go that way. And there were things that Sean could understand that I felt like I would share with other people, and they just weren't able to bridge the gap. But to have those kind of conversations, with with the showstopper, or sometimes to look at your cell phone and see like, oh, Shawn Michaels is texting me. Like, again, the 15, 16-year-old me is not believing this. Or even to call Triple H my boss. Like, it's weird.
Yeah. I as a fan, it must be pretty trippy. You know what I mean?
It is.
Yeah. I can only imagine. You're obviously, back on the independent circuit, and you're not working for a major company at the moment. What led to the departure of you in AEW, if you don't mind me asking?
We just couldn't agree on numbers. So after I got released, like literally right around the corner of that, I had some family stuff that came up that was very, just life stuff. Life happens, right?
Yeah.
And so at that time, when the AEW option came to be, I wasn't in great headspace, and had a new house. We were planning a wedding, and the idea of another contract was safe, and that provided a certain amount of security. So I probably jumped the gun, or I don't know how to phrase it, but just I made sure that it was only a year. I did not want to do any more than a year for the numbers that we were talking. And then at the end of that year, because I felt like, okay, I will take this year and I'll show you that you will want to pay me more. And we just didn't see things the same way. And so it got to that point where it was like, okay, we're not really even starting close to where we need to start to. So my agent and I were just like, okay, he asked me at one point, like, well, this is the number they're starting at, and I said, well, let's just walk away. So that's what we did.
Way different from our negotiations where we just signed you to a 3-year contract. So unfortunately, you're stuck here now. No option.
Sorry, and no security. There's
zero
security in
zero. You actually owe us money. That's how crappy this contract is. I'll give you my PayPal at the end of the show. But
it's the holiday season, give to others.
Do you still love wrestling? Because the business, and we talk to so many people where the business of wrestling, it saturates their love of it as a kid. And there's so much wrestling, you can't catch it all. And I get that being a wrestler, you're probably not even watching your own product because you're running, you're coming home, you're being a father, you're maintaining the mustache. That's a full-time job in itself. But do you still love wrestling?
Well, I got to be honest. I got a little bit of a cheat code. My wife teaches barbering at the state college here, so she helps. If it were not for her, I probably would not be able to maintain the grooming the way that I do. I do still watch some wrestling. A good portion of that right now is our 10-year-old here. She likes to catch NXT and AEW and Raw, and it's something that I can watch with her. So I watch a lot of that stuff kind of passively. I don't pay as close attention to it as I used to. Because again, I think it's good to have a little bit of the separation. There's times that I still love wrestling for sure. There's times I'm reminded while doing it, oh man, yeah, I do love this. And then there's the other parts of it that, you're kind of like after 20 years, like, well, I could do without this. But there's, I would say overall, I still love it. But there's other things I think I want to do. And, like I just did a boxing match in Dubai, and it very much fell in my lap. But prior to that, I was going to do another amateur kickboxing fight. I was working on putting that together anyway. And it was more just, I feel like I just had the itch to compete again in whatever that is. And, for me, between wrestling, pro wrestling, and then legitimate sport, whether it was football or kickboxing or whatever, there's this single-minded sort of focus that you have when you're competing. And it's just like, I'm going out there to beat you and you're going to try to beat me. Where in pro wrestling, the anxiety that I get is because we're spinning plates. And we're spinning multiple plates at one time. And because we control certain variables, you're expected to spin plates and then have 5 or 6 added because the top rope breaks or because the referee takes a bump or, whatever. So that's the anxiety I feel in my occupation. And sometimes I just, it really, doing that fight in Dubai felt really good to know, like, okay, I've trained to do this one thing. And I'm going to go out tonight and I'm going to try my best to do that. And he's going to try his best to do that too. as opposed to all of the plates that we spin in pro wrestling.
Did you win?
I did. Yes, sir. Second round.
That was my next
TKO.
question.
Yeah.
Thanks for.
Well, we you know what, Dennis? Looks like there's money to be made. Me and you, fucking Dubai.
Boxing match?
No, just belly bumping, pal. Belly bumping.
Pillow fight.
There's no way I'm fighting a guy with a face tattoo. I'm going to be honest with you right now. You will beat my ass just on looks.
Well, I mean, amateur, because part of my workout routine for years was boxing because my trainer was a boxer. And it's all about the cardio, right? It's all about, that whole thing. I guess my last question, because it's something that you alluded to, a few questions ago about talking about, being the tag team specialist you are, and the opportunities that you had with tag teams and tag team wrestling, the Briscoes, and we're going to throw FTR in there. We're going to throw the Young Bucks in there. I mean, there's, the Acclaimed, it's just, I feel like, do you have a feeling, well, I guess maybe this is a two-part question, that you're A, underutilized, and B, is there a sense of non-completion, meaning you weren't able to see that sort of vision through on a personal level as a tag team?
As far as the vision, like, I really felt like there was room in that AEW run for a Crockett Cup style pay-per-view. And I think tag team wrestling is so overlooked that I believe fans would have really enjoyed the difference, the juxtaposition, if you will, that it would have been to have a tag team main event, a tag team, pretty much like tournament. I think it would have been, and I really feel like we had such a variety of teams when, like the ones that you named, and there's more, there's Trent and Rocky, Trent and Dustin, whatever combination you want to put together with those guys.
Butcher and the Blade.
Butcher and the Blade, yeah. I mean, it goes on and on.
Yes.
I really felt like that was money kind of left on the table, and it's unfortunate. So I do feel like that. I would have liked to have seen that kind of come through a little bit better than it did. But who knows? Maybe another time.
Well, I'll just say, my favorite thing in the last probably 10, 15 years was the Cruiserweight Cup. I love that, and because that's like a specialized kind of thing, and how you said like a Crockett Cup. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Money left on the table. I digress. Dennis, take us home.
Undisputed Podcast. I want to talk about this real quick while we wrap this up and give you, because first and foremost, holy cow, it's a very underrated podcast. It's a lot of chit chat banter. You talk about MMA stuff. You have wrestling news. You might be, and I was just telling Lars this before we hit record, it might be one of the few wrestling podcasts that has a pro wrestler talking about wrestling news and then having a fantasy draft on Halloween candy. It is,
it
is really eclectic. It's interesting. And how does it come about? Because we used to have Petey Williams before he passed on to the company in the sky, Connecticut, as a producer. But and it was like pulling teeth to get him, and he was one of my best friends that come do a podcast. And when you ask a wrestler to come do your podcast, sometimes it's like, all right, who Lars? Yeah, I'll come do it because of him. So how do you get roped into doing a fucking podcast?
I've wanted to do one for a long time, and there was one years ago that I did with Dalton Castle, and Dalton and I were very good friends. And what I realized was that sometimes you shouldn't do such a thing with someone you're that tight with, because it just became like innocuous as all hell. There was no difference between when he would just call me up and be like, "Hey, yeah, you want to just come over tonight?" Or we lacked structure. This one, it's two buddies of mine that I actually we all went to the same high school, believe it or not. And we just reconnected at some point in our adulthood, and it was discussed. And my buddy Frank is a bit of a wrestling fan, and Dennis as well. And we talked about it, and my buddy Dennis he's been a radio DJ for God knows, I don't know, as long as I've been wrestling, if not longer. And so he was already occupying some of the podcast space, and it seemed to just make sense. So we did the first couple, and I feel like the combination's just kind of been getting better as we've gone, and we're getting a little bit better at it as we go. And a little more structured and a little less, just bullshitting and less innocuous. The guests have, I think, made a big difference too. And those have come about, in all sorts of places, which again, pro wrestling has allowed me certain access to things, and so it's given us some guests here and there that I really didn't expect, and the thing's getting better as we go. So I guess that's the most positive thing I can say about it.
Can I just say, as the Dennis and Frank of this podcast, can you say their names? Because I've had podcast guests in the host. I won't say anything on, Eli Drake and Petey Williams, who does a podcast. Although Lars has mentioned my name, it'll be like, yeah, I do a podcast. It's Wrestling Perspective. I do it with this other guy, and then they keep going. So can you say their names so they?
Yes.
So I know Dennis and Frank will listen later because they support you. Just know, Dennis and Frank, I got your back.
You do, sir. You do, sir. Dennis Romanowski, but he is better known to the world as D. Scott. Like I said, he's been in radio for 100 years, because Dennis is actually 125 years old. Frank Ferraro is the other gentleman that does the.
That's a wrestling name right there.
Yes, it is. Right. He's got a hell of a Iron Sheik impression too. We'll have to parade that out on the next episode. But yeah, Frank Ferraro, Dennis Romanowski, two buddies of mine, and that's the Undisputed podcast.
Frank Ferraro, the Kansas City jobber.
If you're not calling him Fabulous Frank Ferraro on your next podcast, you're leaving money on the table. You're the equivalent of AEW. That's all I'm saying.
Some promoter in the South would have called him Frank Ferrari.
Oh,
ferocious Frank Ferrari.
Oh my gosh, even better.
Yeah.
All right, Bobby. You've spent enough time with us. You got to go be a dad, maintain the mustache. We appreciate every minute you spent with us. Where can people find you on social media real quick?
At the Bobby Fish on Instagram and on Twitter. The Undisputed Podcast with Bobby Fish. We are on YouTube. We are potentially going to end up on the Premier Network with the podcast in the coming months. So look for us there. At the moment, the podcast is available on any and all platforms, whether it be Apple, iHeartRadio, all of them.
Bobby, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Yes, sir. No, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, gentlemen. Lars, good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you too, man.
Yes, sir.